They've done studies, in fact, involving blacks. In fact, this one was done by Donna Shalala, who was the Secretary of Health, I believe, at the time. And her study showed that actually black youths use less drugs than any other ethnic group.
During the Bush administration, they took a survey of ghetto kids in drug-ridden neighborhoods, those ones who had never touched hard drugs, and they all said the same thing.
Yet, if you see in prison, blacks are, what, 85 to 90% of drug arrests. It doesn't correlate. What happens is targeting. If you think in your mind that certain people are the ones that are the suspects, that's where you're going to make your stops at.
I graduated from Yale Law School in 1993. I grew up in the South. I had never been north of Kentucky before I went to law school. I got there. I had never seen so much drug abuse as went on among the undergraduates at Yale. Literally across the street and 2 blocks away, there was also drug abuse in the housing projects. If a kid, 19-year-old kid, got caught doing drugs at Yale, they were considered to be experimenting with drugs. Maybe they go to drug rehab or whatever, get their lives turned around. Those kids went on to become doctors, lawyers, accountants, the President of the United States, etc. 2 blocks away, a 19-year-old caught doing drugs is a drug dealer, a drug pusher, and they went to prison. This is the way the country works. This is the way the system works. We know, statistics have shown over and over again, there is no more drug abuse happening in the inner city than in the suburbs. If you really want to catch a bunch of drug abusers, don't go in a housing project, go in a frat house. You'll get all the drugs you want and all the arrests you want. But the system knows that if any police department sent its drug unit onto Harvard's campus and arrested the sons and daughters of privilege, the police chief would lose his job by Monday morning.
First, the problem of drug crime is defined in a highly racialized manner, which results in the concentration of law enforcement resources in communities of color. The Kennedy Commission, Justice Kennedy recently headed up an ABA commission on criminal justice in which they investigated issues relating to mass incarceration and the war on drugs, and they found what many researchers have known for a long time, that drug use and drug sales is relatively equal across racial lines, that relatively equal proportions of African Americans, whites, Latinos, and Asian Americans engage in both drug use and drug sales. But law enforcement resources are almost entirely concentrated in African American and Latino communities.
That just violates my sense of basic decency. I mean, that violates my sense that, like, we're all supposed to be citizens in one country, that the law applies to everyone equally. I mean, that's runs so totally. And there's 2 million people in prison today. Drugs, small amounts.
2 million.
And, you know, a lot of these people made mistakes, but all of them have moms. And if I went to prison, I know what that would do to my mom. And I'm assuming that the moms of these 2 million guys, mostly guys, feel the same way. So you can see the human misery that this basic hypocrisy creates.
Central Intelligence, during at least 1 or 2 years, and I know you know the case, aided and abetted the Venezuelan National Guard, their assets, in the smuggling of as much as 27 tons of cocaine into the United States, and got away with it.
By the way, the head of the DEA, his name is Rob Bonner, is a friend of mine throughout the first George Bush administration, documented that yes, the CIA was involved with the importation of a fair amount of cocaine, but it just has to happen because of the money.
We understand what you're saying. A ton of cocaine was smuggled into the United States of America. Well, in cooperation with the CIA?
That's exactly what appears to have happened.
My own brother was a drug addict. He's dead now. How do we put my brother in jail when and the people named on this show can smuggle 27 tons of cocaine.
Where did this policy come from? Unfortunately, I have conducted an inquiry into this, and I have determined that drug prohibition laws came for reasons of racism, empire building, and ignorance. People in the United States didn't have any idea what marijuana was, but it began to be associated with those Mexicans. Drug prohibition for cocaine was basically passed in order to protect white women from black males. And the history will document this.
Since its inception, the drug war has become the longest, most costly and destructive war in American history.
The drug war is a perfect continuing example of why we will never win the war on terrorism, because it captures the ineffectiveness of the U.S. government, and it captures the fact that it's being used against poor people and not against the people who benefit most from drugs, which are the bankers that launder the money.
We don't send nicotine addicts to jail, and we don't send alcoholics to jail. We shouldn't send drug addicts to jail.
People have to realize that most of our history we didn't have federal laws against the use of drugs.
$50 billion a year at the local, state, national level, clogging our courts year after year.
Why in the world do we have millions of innocent young people wasting away in prison when the big people who are committing these huge, atrocious crimes are getting away every day? Instead of war on poverty, you've got a war on drugs so the police can bother me.
The administration had a war on poverty, and that seemed to dissipate. It seemed to disappear at all. I mean, it was gone. And then all of a sudden up popped this thing called war on drugs.
The fact is that in this last year, coca production has gone up 11%. It hasn't gone down, it's gone up 11%. So it's not working.
The people have every right to be concerned, and I think we have to do it differently. There's an enormous demand for the drugs in the United States, and what we don't do in our own country is provide for the drug treatment program. If we don't reduce the demand for drugs in the world, then in countries like Colombia, somebody's always going to grow it. As long as there's a market, as long as big money can be made, it's going to continue to go on.
An addict reaches the point where they want help and they want treatment is usually turned away. They say, come back in a few months, we should have a slot open for you. There's just not enough money. Meanwhile, it's always easy to get in jail. There's no waiting list to get in jail. And that really reflects our priorities, I'm afraid.
My own personal opinion, I think the jail cell is better than the rehab.
Yeah, the Clinton administration escalated the war on drugs. And Clinton himself said that, he would never let, any Republican appear to be tougher on crime than he was. So far from, rejecting the law and order and get tough on crime rhetoric, he felt that what it meant to be a new Democrat was to embrace it. And to prove that he could be as tough on them as any Republican. And, certainly his decision to oversee the execution of a mentally retarded black man within weeks of the New Hampshire primary and to make a big show about it was partly, an effort to prove that he was serious in his willingness to crack down on the communities that, the Republicans had had so much success in using to their political advantage.